Dan, you want to get us started?
I guess that's me.
Yeah.
So for a while now, and I recognize that I am newer to the network than a lot of the folks that are on the line, but one of the things that has intrigued me from the beginning about the Presbyterian Coach Network was one of our stated goals of promoting. I think I put it in some of the notes as building, or we may have said building, but the word that's actually in our mission statement is promoting a coaching culture in the PCUSA. And I've been very intrigued about the possibilities of that, as I know many of you are as well. I would say, at least to put it in my own words at this point, that how we, first of all, what that means to each of us may not be clear. And so I would think part of this conversation could be about, what does that mean to you? How do you see, what does that look like? First of all, what does promoting end up looking like? And what would a sort of an ideal, let's say, coaching culture perhaps look like? In other words, what are we shooting for in that regard? And then the other, and I think, or I hope perhaps more substantial part of the conversation might be about ways that we might go about that, some of the ways that we've considered, and maybe briefly speak to some of the efforts that, that have been made. But my own personal hope is that we might come out with some new possibilities, some new ideas, perhaps some new definitions as well, about promoting and that idea, and about, again, about coaching culture. But again, what might we do? What might we consider doing as an organization? The leadership team, when we talked about this at our last meeting, we have some ideas, but we've tried some things and have felt perhaps the things we've tried, I guess I would put it, and Brian, feel free to, or anybody else feel free to speak to this, but haven't had the legs that we might have hoped that they would have. And so we're kind of looking for other options in that regard. And so we decided to have this meeting, and there won't be an opening or closing word because there's no certificate for this week. We can't offer a certificate because we're not actually teaching anything. We're hoping to get as many folks engaged in this conversation. And so I'm gonna just sort of stop there, but I noticed that Peggy had a great suggestion, which is to simply invite everybody to introduce yourself. If you just introduce yourselves briefly, so unmute yourself, introduce yourself, especially those folks who are on the phone, because we're not sure who all of you are, but for those who are on the phone, the rest of us ought to introduce themselves as well. So I'm Dana Sutton. I am a member of the PCN leadership team, and I am, as of about 3 weeks ago, the interim pastor at Highland Presbyterian Church in Huntington, West Virginia, and also a PCC certified coach.
I'm Brian Smith. I'm also part of the PCN leadership team. Pastor in the Detroit area in a city called Canton, Michigan. Been here quite a while, actually, about 26 years. And I'm kind of excited to come up this summer. We're going to be hosting an event at Ghost Ranch called Wild Christ, Wild Earth, Wild Self. We've got Brian McLaren speaking at an event in July, and then Richard Rohr speaking at our event in October. So we're trying to kind of combine sort of coaching and spiritual development with being on the land in some intentional way. So just got off a call about that to be here, but it's great to be with you all.
Great, thanks. Who's next?
I'll go. Peggy, in Louisville, Kentucky, and I am ACC coaching with pastors and with congregations.
Hey, Peggy.
Thanks, Peggy.
This is Lorna Kauk. I'm in Albuquerque, and I'm honorably retired, have been coaching since 2005 in PCC, and I coach primarily new execs, or ongoing execs too, I guess, and pastors.
Great.
Thanks.
Hi,
thanks.
this is Cindy Thomas. I am in Canton. I have my ACC, and I am Brian Smith's secretary and often partner in crime.
Thanks, Cindy.
Hey,
Hi.
everybody. Oops.
That's
Who
all
wants
right.
to
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Robin Cross. I'm the Robin CMC up there. I'm in Northwest New Jersey, Newton Presbytery. I just finished my 100 hours. I just need to get online and take the test to be ACC certified. I've been coaching pastors, and I'm an interim pastor right now and do some church consulting, among other things.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah.
Good to be with you.
Go ahead, Mitch.
Hi, this is Mitch Coggin, and I am in Victoria, British Columbia. I am PCUSA, a member of Holston Presbytery, but I'm serving a transitional congregation on Vancouver Island for the foreseeable future for next 2 or 3 years. I am PCC and primarily coach with mid-council leaders and also first call pastors, and was blessed to, in the year of 2008, I believe it was, Lorna Kalk and I were on the team that began the establishment of PCC, and have been overjoyed to see its growth and development over the last several years. So we continue to be blessed to be a part of PCN.
Thank you.
I'm Graham Hart, and I'm in Peace River Presbytery, General Presbytery. I've been here 18 years. You heard Dana was my boss for a while, right? Isn't that how it worked?
Sure.
When we both had hair a long time ago, and I am I've gone through the Auburn program, and I've got to take the test and get my certification, but or finish it. I've coached pastors and some other execs and some in the nonprofit sector. So that's kind of where I've focused.
Hi, I'm Catherine Gilliland. I'm in Raleigh. I'm the clerk of session at White Memorial Presbyterian Church and New Hope Presbytery. And I do a combination of coaching and business, as well as mostly at White Memorial. And I work for a company that has tools based on character strengths as well. And I'm here mostly to learn from a lot of you. So I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm Debbie Foster. I'm the Associate Stated Clerk in Foothills Presbytery in upstate South Carolina. I'm a pastor, also am a certified coach, ACC level, and have been coaching since 2009. I have a small coaching practice of my own. I get to coach through my mid-council leadership, do a lot of work with ministers, educators, youth directors, and also with sessions and visioning and that kind of work. So it's good to be here. It's been a while since I've been on a call, so it's good to be back.
Thank you.
This is Kristen Granberg.
And on the echo.
Echoing for some reason. Maybe that's just New York City.
Well, again, if you're on both your computer and your phone, that causes that.
Yeah, but I can't get my computer work, but I like seeing you all. I'll take that off. Okay. I close that down. Anyway, I'm in New York City. I'm an interim pastor.
Kristen, if you just mute the computer and then maybe use the phone for the audio, try that.
I think we lost her.
Oh, on both the phone and the.
We overloaded the networks.
The feedback was just too much.
The system expunged it.
Well, hopefully she'll come back. Is there anybody else that hasn't introduced themselves?
I can go. I'm Chip Lowe. I am a former member of the leadership team of PCN. and had the pleasure of working with a number of the even former leaders of the Presbyterian Coach Network, as well as the new ones. And I am a co-pastor, three-quarter-time co-pastor, and I have my own coaching company, and I have the PCC level.
Anybody else? So Brian, I guess you and I are the only members of the leadership team that are on. Were you moderating? Because I know I wasn't, but
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm not, no, I don't know I was,
Okay.
but I can certainly do it. So part
Okay.
of it was, as Dana said, we really want to kind of get us all together to sort of talk about, as Dana said, the mission of promoting a coaching culture in the Presbyterian Church USA, and sort of figure out, how we're doing with that. Are there places in our denominational structure where it might be helpful to try some new things? We did form a task force to try to express that, to find ways to do that. And we had some initiatives. We had a contact with the Board of Pensions at one point where we thought we might have a place to work with them on their kind of wellness retreats for clergy, but that kind of, the initial interest seemed to dry up very quickly. We're still not quite sure what happened with that. Also, we couldn't get a response to the person who had expressed interest. And so, as you know, we have a booth at General Assembly that we've done. Dana has gotten some podcasts going with the idea of trying to use that perhaps as ways to allow people in their own presbyteries perhaps to help spread the word about coaching. And so we're just sort of wanting to kind of collectively put our heads together and ask, how can we continue to move things forward in terms of trying to make inroads in promoting our coaching culture in our own structure. So that was kind of the question that was put out there, I think, in the promotion for our meeting. So I think we're just going to kind of open it up and see if folks have some thoughts, things that you've tried that you feel have worked well, perhaps in your own attempts to spread the word in your presbytery, synod, or some other kind of way.
This is Lorna, and I'll claim responsibility for the language of promoting a coaching culture, because I think I wrote that original document. And when I think about it, I really don't know exactly what I meant by that, other than part of my concern was the number of groups that say they do coaching, but they don't really have any formal coaching training.
Yeah.
So going back to New Beginnings, when we had that, they had coaches, and I was one of those on the condition that they would actually do some training, which they did, and that was good. But I don't know about new worshiping communities and their coaching thing. The New Church, New Way thing mentioned a retreat of coaches through that program in this week's news. And, some of my concern is, do we have a responsible use of the term coach? And I'm wondering if we could look at all of the different groups that say they have coaches and approach them and volunteer ourselves to actually provide some training for them. If they'd cover our expenses, because any one of us who has the ICF credential can do coach-specific training hours that somebody could actually use for portfolio approach to credential.
So Lorna, this is Dana. If I can ask for some clarification on what you said, part of what I hear underneath is the assumption that as coaches, part of building a coaching culture isn't just coaching, it's also training potentially.
Well, I think it's helping people as broadly as possible become aware of the discipline of coaching so that we don't have a casual use of that term. And so that when people are using it, they're actually doing coaching, not mentoring or whatever.
Okay, so education, a big part of it's education then about what coaching really is and the process and.
Right. The other idea that I've had or thought that I've had, actually I have two more. The Synod of the Northeast has this coaching task force. And I don't know how much progress they've made, but they're the only synod I know that's been doing that. And so I wonder what we can learn from their experience. And then I also wonder, what could we be learning from some of our denominational, other denominational coaches, what they're doing. And I think, you know, almost every good program we've developed in the church, we've done so in partnership with somebody else. Like the Presbyterian Leader Formation Program came with help from the Episcopals, and, you know, New Beginnings was very much interdenominational. There are some others that have been like that. And I'm wondering if we're using those contexts well enough. That's about all I have to say, so I'm going to mute again.
Thank you. I appreciated what you said about looking for partners. And I do think those of us who have been at least talking about and working on this for the last year in particular that I'm aware of, we've definitely been kind of looking for that, but maybe not being specific enough about, even from our own angle, what a partnership might look like, you know, and even the idea of, you know, what if we sort of said, okay, here are some partnership possibilities that we'd like to, things we'd like to offer, or from our end, this is what a partnership might be, and try to maybe approach people from that angle, for example.
I know one of the things that we had talked about too was trying to create perhaps a short video or something that could be used by people to promote coaching in their own presbyteries. So like if we have a pre-presbytery event, or you have something actually during a presbytery meeting that could help provide a clear sense of what coaching is. In fact, we have this network. You know, so people are always trying to sort of recreate, well, if I had 30 minutes before a presbytery meeting to have a pre-presbytery event, or had a chance to show up during the announcement time of a presbytery meeting and could show a short video, what have been some ways that maybe people have tried to do that? And if you have found any particular thing to be effective in terms of trying to really zero in on getting that across. So I think Dana had raised the thought, if we could create like a 3 to 5 minute video and make it available to people in the PCN as a resource to use in a meeting, would that be something that would be valuable to try to spread the word? Or maybe a synod meeting too, perhaps, you know.
This is Graham. Being kind of on the inside watching this, also listening to Lorna a long time ago as she was starting this and hoping to create a Presbyterian culture. I think one thing different, for instance, between us and the Methodist, they have more resources. It's also more top down, and it's an expectation that gets created that this is part of our culture. Whether through the district superintendents primarily or bishops, you know, we don't have, you know, we don't necessarily have the same resource base that they do, or the same expectation. So I think we've, in a sense, tried to work from the bottom up, you know, to do that. I think the idea of getting some kind of video that's well done, as far as the impact, the difference coaching can make, and a testimonial or several, you know, so that it is captivating, could be important. I think having someone in the presbytery identified who are the coaches within this presbytery, or nearby presbyteries that are available, and have that person there. is all part of kind of that. And then just in terms of who's got the energy, to do it, most things that we all are involved in are by council committees and kind of volunteer. Most people are, and, to me, kind of who in the network's got the time to kind of do the grunt work of contacting Presbyterian leaders, getting, in front of folks, what's available. So I know for instance, the Presbyterian Camp and Conference Association, that whole network, part of their, obviously they're much larger, impactful, and their fee structures are different, but they've got staff that are constantly out there resourcing the camps, being in touch with presbyteries. So who among us might have the ability, time to do that, because it is time intensive, to keep bird dogging until you get something moved forward. Anyway, just kind of having watched it, and in my own presbytery, I can't really do it because my agreement is I will not coach anyone within the presbytery. So, so people know I coach and coach others, but I don't do it here.
Has anybody found, like in a presbytery setting, where coaching is either strongly encouraged or in some ways required of either incoming pastors or we've got a group in Detroit. It's called the Pastors in Transition Group, and we have 2 retreats. And our presbytery has set up a scholarship for pastors to pay for half of coaching fees up to, I think, for 6 sessions. I think Chris Holmes was saying that, go back to Methodist Church, that there's a stronger requirement. I think some of the bishops require pastors, maybe new pastors, to actually get coaching. So it's really something that the denominational hierarchy has not just been a favor, but been required of, at least to some of their clergy. So I'm just sort of wondering, like, in terms of whether it's COMs, where's the avenue that might be most effective in trying to get buy-in in really pushing the idea that coaching is beneficial, not just for pastors, but for congregations as well.
This is.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Go ahead. Oh, this is Lorna. What I was going to say is I don't know the figures right now, but after I get my taxes done, I'm going to pull it together. In the Presbytery Leader Formation Program that's been going since 2010, the Presbytery leaders all receive coaching for 3 years. And this is a valuable resource that we probably aren't making the best use of. And I have the list of those who have that coaching. I also know that several of those leaders have made coaching more available in their presbyteries. When a pastor's got a problem or whatever. San Fernando's done that well. Lake Michigan has done that. Ohio Valley has used coaching a great deal since my day, when we were doing some actual training within the presbytery. And I'm sure there are others I don't know about. But I'd be willing to do some of, after I get my taxes done, I'd be willing to do some communicating with execs about things if people, because these are all people I've talked to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If somebody else helped prepare what communication we want to make.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know. There's that group. What was the name of it?
The Presbytery Leader Formation Program.
Okay.
And I coordinated that for 4 years, and then coordinated the coaches in that program for 4 years, have just come out of that. And now Wilson is taking over both roles again. In between Wilson and me as the program coordinator, Peter Nord did it, and Peter's not strong on coaching, and so that's why I kept the coaching piece of it for so long.
Yeah, and Lorna, I think that's a great resource if you're ever going to do a video to capture the impact the coaching has had with several of them, as far as making a case for it. But I agree with you. I think in each of those presbyteries, they know the value, and that will transfer out. The other is the cost of it. I'm just curious, Lorna, with your contacts. I think Methodists have some funding. We don't necessarily have the funding or funding sources to help with it. Do you know, in terms of other denominations, kind of how they've done the funding or the coming alongside to make it, more affordable?
I don't know within the denomination. I know several presbyteries do things like either pay for coaching or pay half of coaching for people. I've had some clients from other presbyteries where the presbytery is the one who's paying me. But denominationally, you're right, there aren't any funds. Now, if we could come up with some brilliant way to say that we were going to do some research with it, or we were going to do something, we might even get a Louisville Institute or a Lilly grant to make coaching possible. If we had a measure of the efficacy of it.
Well, and Lilly has put major emphasis in coaching, and they've just awarded, I think, seminaries and a bunch of folks grants.
Right. Yep. But they might award that, something like that, to a group like ours if we had clear purpose.
I had just written that down, Lorna, right before you said that I think that's a great idea to sort of explore that possibility. I will say that I think some folks have again, kind of back to your original comment about how we see coaching and what is coaching really versus what some folks call coaching, that there may even be some, how do I want to put that? There's some question, I think, about some of the grant awards that have been made recently with regard to how they're defining or understanding coaching. At least that's my understanding. So.
Chip, were you guys something earlier? Did you get a chance to share?
Well, so I helped create the Synod of the Northeast Coach Network, and part of the reason I share that is because the Synod was looking to create networks, and the coaching network was the first one created. And but I think to Lorna's point about measuring things, we had to create it in such a way that it would be we could show impact, like that it wasn't coaching for its own sake. It was coaching for emerging ministries or pastors of congregations that were in new beginnings, or multicultural settings, that ethnic racial settings that needed some support in a way they weren't getting otherwise. So I think there's part of what I've learned about coaching in our denomination is that it does need to partner, but it needs to partner towards the impact of what the program that's already going might do or do better because of coaching. Lorna, to your question, I'd be happy to talk with you about what it would look like to connect PCN to the Presbyterian, the leadership program, or and I think I think that, so if I can be helpful there, I'd be happy to be. I think the question that you know, Dubuque got $1 million grant. I think it was to think about how coaching might work, but I wasn't clear on what that coaching really was. It sounded almost like it was more sports related, something. And so I guess, you know, I think the grant idea is a really cool idea, because I'm not sure that what has been promoted as coaching out of some of the grants really are really coaching per se. And I guess that's the third piece of that for me, is that in some of the work that I've heard about through PMA, I get the impression that people are learning coaching skills, but they're not hiring coaches. And so I think there's a need to be evangelists for coaching that, you know, that almost needs to continue to sell who we are and what we do distinctively. And some of that is, you know, sort of personal work of building a coaching brand yourself, but some of that is the goal of this network, as I hope to have helped it, is to build something bigger than just one person, so that the culture of the Presbyterian Church sees coaching as a support for the transition that it's. Those are some thoughts.
Thank you.
This is Peggy. I am working, and Kristen's involved with it too, with one of the seminaries that got the Lilly grant. And I'm working with LPTS, and we intentionally made the coaching certified coaches only. And when we gathered with all the other groups that had gotten this particular grant, it quickly became clear to me that we were one of the few that did that. That others were using coaches, like you said, they may, Chip, they may have some coach training, et cetera, but they're very loosely using the term coach and what that means. So I agree, and you know, we need to uplift the integrity of coaching, of being trained and certified and using people that have that training, because it's because there's no licensing or anything for coaching. Anybody could call themselves a coach. And people are doing it all over the place.
This is Kristen. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Couple thoughts I had here. The other day through Facebook on that Presbyterian leaders page, someone was asking for recommendations of coaches, somebody I knew. And there were a whole bunch of people saying, talk to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And I think they're all on our list. But I just messaged this person separately and said, hey, there's this whole coaching network. You actually can read about bios, and everyone, you know, on this list is, you know, trained. And wrote back and said she had never even heard of that. You know, the interesting piece was like maybe even a little piece of what is the Presbyterian Coaching Network. I attached our, you know, the information, you know, for her to look at. The second thing is, like Chip, I'm part of the Synod of the Northeast here, and the Synod does provide scholarships, which do help. Their letter just came out again looking for, you know, applicants. And talking with our EP, I, you know, sent over and I said, I hope you guys got this. I think it should go in the newsletter. And I was talking with Bob, and he's like, you know, we're trying to do vital congregations, you know, that new program that's happening with the presbyteries across the country. I don't know if you've heard this. There's a few of them in there. There's another cohort of 14 presbyteries. And New York's we're trying to get up to 30 churches involved in this. But Bob's thought was we should get coaches for our facilitators. Like he went there even before I could. So I think that maybe through even looking at vital congregations to suggest to Catherine Threadgill that that's part of, like, if a presbytery wants to do things like that, they could. Sort of looking at it like that's a new, sort of really new program that's taking a lot of energy in a lot of places, and people have been very happy with the work that's happening on that already. So that's just some thoughts. I don't know how we, connect with the folks. Like, Chip did a great job getting the synod here in the Northeast to actually consider coaching as an important part of what they do.
Thank you.
I have an idea I wanted to give.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Let's say that what Chip did, I'm sort of wondering if there's some way, I'm thinking of my synod here, Synod of the Covenant. It sounds like that happened because there was a very intentional way intentional focus to make it happen. And I'm just sort of wondering, Chip, if you can speak a little bit more, maybe just briefly about what it is, what did you do that helped to sort of move the synod to move that direction?
Well, Janice Fitzgerald was another person on the leadership team as well. And, we found coaches in multiple presbyteries, and we partnered together to form, to ask the synod to fund a network, and to fund, 5 sessions for individuals and 3 sessions for groups, and to fund the ability to, get the word out a little bit. So,
so it came from basically you said an ad hoc group of coaches in the various presbyteries of the synod, and you got together and approached them yourselves, not through a particular presbytery, just as a part of the member of the synod.
Yeah, so it was, it's networks are the thing that the Synod of the Northeast wants to do. So,
that's right.
So we tried to use the structure that was in place, to, and quite honestly, I think some of this is, to Graham's point, is the energy that has to be put into this to get the train out of the station, and it takes a lot of startup work, energy to, or it takes a lot of energy to get something started up. And, I think I guess I would wonder too, how could with what Kristen's saying, I think there's clearly we're still not well known, as a Presbyterian coach network, and there, needs to be some more education around the denomination about the existence of this. So, because one of the great points of this network is that you're not just getting somebody who hangs up a shingle and says, I'm a coach. I've interviewed people who call themselves a coach, and when I ask them, what are your credentials? They say, I have a sign, or something. It's like, so, being able to say that we are a trained and certified group of people is, I think, really important. But it requires continually telling people that. So I've got to have another conversation with my new presbytery exec and, begin to sort of see what we might create locally as well. But it continues to be a conversation to have with people continually.
Does anybody know of any programs or initiatives that have reached out to the Presbyterian seminaries? Because when we were talking with somebody at the Board of Pensions about using the network in their work, they were talking about creating some retreats for seminarians, and she was talking about maybe being able to use coaching as part of what they'd be able to do to help seminarians kind of navigate some of the challenges that they face, in seminary. So I'm sort of curious, because that's another big part of our structure are the seminaries, and I'm wondering if there's been any attempts to just connect with how to raise consciousness in seminaries, say, well, coaching might actually be something that would be helpful to people before they become pastors, in terms of working through a lot of issues that come your way when you are in seminary. Does anybody see anything?
Jumping through all those hoops?
Yeah, sort of when I said, yeah, exactly. You jump through the hoop, a kind of minister, or pastor or not pastor, or just navigating a whole bunch of things. I mean, the Board of Pensions thought it would be a helpful thing to do, but then they kind of just went dark on us. So.
Debbie Foster, Foothills Presbytery. Just a couple of thoughts, and I don't know if I'm going to necessarily touch base on your last question, but there's a thread. And when I came into mid-council work, coaching language and the understanding and appreciation of coaching didn't really exist, except for my colleague and exec was new. So he was in the Presbyterian cohort that was being coached that Lorna mentioned. So that was the first time he had ever heard of coaching. And I think it really shifted his lens and understanding of what the heart of coaching is all about. So it's become a little bit more part of the way we breathe around here. In Committee on Ministry, Committee on Prep, going back to somebody's earlier question, I staff both those committees, and we do recommend coaching to a lot of our pastors that are in transition, a lot of our students that are hitting walls, not always spiritual directors, but often they need a transition professional coach to help them get to their next step. And it's not going to work for their liaison or for the presbytery staff person to be that person. And so we refer a lot of those folks to coaches, but I'll be honest, the coaching network has not been a place that we have been referring because we don't know each other. And it's like going to a tennis coach. This is my opinion, a tennis coach or a golf pro, or I know Dana and I know Lorna, and I would feel comfortable. Graham, I've met Graham, but I think we all need to get to know each other a little bit and understand each other's nuances, so we can begin to network and refer within. And by doing the work that we're doing, people will find out. This is life-giving work. And I have found in my own coaching practice, I've backed off of the whole sell yourself approach. That's just not who I am. But the more I coach, the more the word gets out. And so that seems to be, the old networking kind of approach. Just recently, I have been in touch with Union Seminary Charlotte campus, because I'm 2 hours south and that's my hometown, about some of the challenges that our students are facing, and have made that suggestion and just begun a little bit, and had the Dubuque article to reference as well. But from our perspective, it's just gradually getting into the rhythm of who we are as a presbytery.
Debbie, this is Peggy. I appreciate you sharing that. And I agree. I think if we can refer from within, it really helps. And I've done that a couple of times, and it's been done for me, and it really does make a difference. The seminaries, going back to the seminaries, some of us in our positions have the opportunity to connect with them. And I think if those of us who have connections already with certain seminaries can utilize those connections to promote coaching. And then, of course, we have seminaries like Columbia now and Dubuque that are having their own coaching programs, but utilizing the connections that we all have to kind of encourage seminaries. And I also want to just make one other note. The person who is the manager for the call process support and teaching elder ministries, that's her title, it's really long, is training to be certified. And so she's working, trying to get her 100 hours right now. And so having someone on the national staff who connected with CPMs, excuse me, and teaching elder ministries could be beneficial to us. I reached out to her when I learned that she was working on certification, and offered to help in any way I could, and also told her about the network and encouraged her to join the network. So anyway, any connections like that we can find, I think it's the personal outreach to people that we have connections with that can be most helpful.
Could I offer? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing I've done in presbyteries that I've been near or known the exec or been in, I have done a volunteer thing of offering 6 sessions to a first-time pastor who's having some difficulties for $10 a session. Now that sounds like, you're selling yourself short, but what I have found is the presbyteries where I've done that have discovered how helpful coaching can be and have gone on to use coaching with other people. And sometimes they've also gone on to fund coaching at a more reasonable level. But I felt like that was the way I could give something back to the church as well as promote coaching.
Lorna, that I really like that. One of the thoughts that I have, I don't know if any of you are familiar with a marketing guy called Tad Hargrave, and his business is called Marketing for Hippies. But one of the things I like about Tad's own approach to his marketing is that he gives away a lot of stuff for free. And I know that a lot of us, I'm sure, have done that as coaches, that we've tried that. But I've started thinking about, well, how might we, what you said to me suggested, the idea of demonstrating our value, and so for people who aren't familiar with coaching, what are ways we could demonstrate our value? And I love your suggestion about, and in fact, I'm going to do that, offer some very, very low cost coaching to folks in my presbytery. But another idea that I had recently that I don't expect us to, kind of make any decisions about this today, but would love to hear a little bit of feedback is, I thought, what if we as a network created something like a monthly or a quarterly, webinar kind of series that we offered to presbyteries or synods. I mean, you can offer it to tons of people at one time for, and just run it once, and I thought if we sort of took turns, if we could, create, like I have a webinar that I've done on compassion fatigue that's been well received, and I'm thinking others of us have expertise in different areas. And, even if we tried it for, 6 months or a year or something like that, if we got enough folks to commit to that, again, it's that sort of startup energy that Chip and Graham were talking about earlier. But, something like that to me, yeah, it takes some coordinating, but it's sort of a shared effort, right? And then we are exposing folks, whoever it is out there, and especially people that are in, more remote areas that might not have other resources nearby. Anyway, it was just an idea. I'm just kind of tossing it out there, but to me, it accompanied what Lorna was suggesting. That before we can convince people that coaching is a good idea, we got to show them somehow that it's helpful.
So talk a little bit about presbyteries, synods, seminaries. As I mentioned, we did have a contact at one point to the Board of Pensions. I guess I'm sort of wondering, does anybody know of any particular ways to connect with them? And I know they put on they put on annual retreats for pastors and families. And again, there was some conversation initially around using the PCN as a resource for the retreats. It kind of has become clear to sort of those of us on the PCN that's almost like the Board of Pensions structure and how you touch base with folks is like a mystery shrouded in, a riddle, whatever else. It just becomes something that seems almost impossible to figure out how to really effectively network with them. So I'm just sort of wondering if folks have any thoughts or experience about ways that we might be able to with that part of our structure.
I think each agency kind of has its own life and things that work and some weirdnesses that no one else understands. I think the Board of Pension, at least in terms of my experience recently, the whole education side of it, which this kind of falls under, I don't understand kind of what's going on and some of the changes. So the fact that there was interest and then it kind of waned doesn't surprise me in the sense of some of the contacts, some of what I was trying to work with, and kind of a lack of responsiveness. So I think that's just a season they're going through. I'm not sure it's going to last forever, but
Interesting.
About it. And what I learned was, well, it's the way it is right now. So that's
the way it is right now.
I think one of the board's interests right now is retaining people in ministry. And if we, going back to our discussion about efficacy of coaching, if we can show that it's making a difference with young pastors, or if it's keeping the closer to retirement folk alive and involved, they will be all over it. But we've got to have some measures.
Would we have any way of doing that ourselves? Or my thought is, as we were talking earlier about like the United Methodist Church, for example, I wonder what their sense of that is, and where we might find some of those if there are, statistics. It can't all be anecdotal evidence, right?
Yeah, Lorna, how do you do a statistical sampling of, because of coaching, I'm a more effective pastor, or I stayed in ministry longer? I mean, how can you get quantifiable evidence to support that? It just seems like it is subjective in terms of what people are going to say.
Well, we'd have to set it up so that we had a control group that didn't get coaching and a group that did, and then find out, in 5 or 10 years if the statistics are different. But we could do a retrospective by survey of people who've come into ministry as to whether or not they had coaching and where they end up. Locating those people would be really difficult.
So is there another source, like in industry? Have they done it so they can demonstrate the benefit, the efficacy in education? I'm just wondering, no one here has got the bandwidth to do this unless they're doing a doctoral project, and have 10 years to get it done.
I wonder, Graham, the International Coaching Federation might be a help to us in this.
Yeah.
Our other brothers and sisters in the Methodist denomination and the Baptist, by the way, are doing this as well. They probably have gotten it somewhere. And I often will fill in surveys for anybody that's in the Coaching Federation that's working on a PhD, anything that has to do with coaching. I try to help. I wonder if we should start there.
Good idea.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good suggestion.
This is Kristen. I'm going to kind of ask a question, I guess. When I coach, I'm not actually ever asking the client for quantifiable information, right? I mean, that's not the way I coach. But it is all experiential. So why can't we promote ourselves through the experience? Numbers can sort of be backup, but through an experience of really how coaching can change someone's life, especially if there is one of us who's been coached that we want to tell that story, or somebody that we've coached who is willing to do that in a way that sort of goes to the video too. Like, in other words, basically we're dealing with experience. So why can't we use that in these days? I mean, look at, Brene Brown started off as a number cruncher, and now she's really talking about her storytelling research. So just throwing that in there as a way of maybe not waiting 10 years, but a way of engaging now, because most of us, even though there's some numbers people, most of us change by virtue of heart.
Okay, we're right at, I know we've already lost a couple of folks who had to drop off at 5, so maybe just a couple of more minutes. And then somebody else Robin has to go too. So I think what we'll do is try and take your comments and just sort of figure out how do we then take what's been shared, find ways to gain some traction on some of those. I know one of the things that, again, around the Board of Pensions that we had our time finding out is like how does the Board of Pensions decide which coaches to work with? Like, for example, they call it coaching in terms of nutritional coaching now they offer through the health program called the Health. But we couldn't figure out like how would you even begin to, who would you contact? How would you, if we had some coaching to offer, we couldn't even figure out like who would you even begin to approach about that. So that's part of the issue would be sort of when we have something valuable to share, it might be about retaining, staying in ministry for a long time. Who would we begin to network with? So if people find out some helpful networking around that would also be really, really helpful to share. So,
well, that's a contracted service.
Yeah, I know, but like who we couldn't even figure out like, who makes that decision? Where would that company, did the Board of Pensions go out and search for somebody? Did somebody respond to a request that they were trying to do nutritional coaching and somebody made a decision about that? Like the whole way that happened, we had no understanding how that happened and how, if you wanted to offer coaching, how you would begin to make that connection. I mean, we don't know how the Board of Pensions found this company. It's not Presbyterian coaches who offer assistance on health coaching, but I'm sure there are people in our network who, maybe not a big contract company, I understand that, but there might have been some ways for us to be helpful, at least in thinking through that with them. But
I think when you get into some of those health-related things, that would run through Highmark. Highmark may well have a subcontract for that. I don't think the board actually finds those coaches. And I think the places where we could get them to do coaching would be follow-up coaching to Credo or some of their, they might be interested in a research project that would take half the new pastors who get coached and half who don't and keep some statistics on it. And again, we might even, they might fund something like that, but we might get Lilly or Louisville Institute to fund something like that.
that's great. All right. Well, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. I know folks have to go. In the thing Dana sent out, there's some information about the upcoming calls. There's a call on April 11th. That's going to be led by Chip Lowe and Marilyn Tobin. And they are still apparently working on a topic to be announced. So we'll look forward to hearing about that. Cindy Thomas and I will be leading a session on coaching around the issue of shadow, around the issue of parts of ourselves that we're often not aware of, and how do you help folks to be coached into greater wholeness? We talk about clients being creative, resourceful, and whole, but to take steps in life, you have to help create, I think, greater wholeness for new possibilities to be embraced and not shut down. And then Phil Berge, that's on May 9th, and on June 13th, Phil Berge, who was part of the faculty first at Auburn and now at Dubuque, will be leading a topic on the use of systems theory in coaching. So we have some things lined up for the next 3 months. So we hope to see you or hear you either way on future calls. I think that's it. Anything else you have, Dana?
No, thank you all for participating. Really appreciate it. Let's keep the conversation going after this too.
All right. Have a good day, you guys. Blessings. Lenten blessings.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.